Hi Peter, lovely to meet up with you last week once again and do some further work on your game. Some really productive sessions. I think an appropriate place to start would be your first swing videoed from this year's visit on the right against your first swing we videoed on your previous visit on the left. So 2016 on the left, 2017 on the right, just to see what sort of progression you've made throughout the past sort of 12 months. First of all, we look a little bit more over it at address. The handle's a little bit lower, which is fine. I haven't got a problem with that. As you take the club back, the club elevates at a much slower rate. The club does not roll open as much as it did. You're putting the wrist conditions in there. So bowing that left wrist out a little bit more. Right leg straightens a little bit too fast on both, and we talked about that during your visit, about just calming the rate at which that happens down, and you saw that progress pretty steadily throughout the visit. You can see that the head on the right doesn't drop as much. The swing on the left, you were really trying to flex the lead knee, you were really trying to keep the weight forward from a pretty neutral setup position. The swing on the right now, you've got the weight forward when viewed from face on via a flexed lead knee. So the lead knee is a little bit more flexed than the trail knee. So therefore you don't have to put that move in. So on the left, you're dipping down a little bit courtesy of the flex that you're adding to the left knee. You're doing too much too soon, which is why the head's dropping down. On the right, it's a much more stable movement. You can see that the arms start to lift on the left. The right arm starts to flex a little bit too much. And the wrist is in a pretty neutral position, but for somebody who has a history of an open club face coming into the golf ball, that's not necessarily the ideal position to be in. And the position you're in on the left, whilst it may look shut, is just presetting a little bit of what we need when we're coming into the golf ball from sort of P6 to P7. So position a little bit less lifted with the arms, a little bit more gradual with the knees, head not moving around quite as much. The main crux of the deal is to get the alignments better at P7. So you can see in both instances the pelvis tucks under a little bit too quick, so you can see the backside moving away from the red line that I've put just on your rear end. But the right image does it far less than the left. On the left, the wrist angles are now coming out, sweet spot's starting to drift out in front of the hands. You can see on the right that the sweet spot's being controlled in a more appropriate manner. So the wrist on the left is more neutral. The wrist on the left is more cupped, and the wrist on the right is more neutral. Would we want a little bit more bow in there? I think you demonstrate it now and again. Will you keep the wrist angles in for longer? You certainly demonstrated it on sort of day 2 and day 3, the bulk of those 2 days during your recent visit. Right shoulder works down and around a little bit more rather than just down, as per on the left hand image. Body starting to rotate a little bit more. Alignments and impact far better, not as shut with the body, not as popped up with the heel, a little bit of flex going in the knee. Hands tracing the arc in a more appropriate manner through the ball. Exit lower and club face much more stable. You can see on the left there's way too much extension. On the right, the extension's still a little bit on the heavy side, but nowhere near as much. So you're seeing a huge sort of calming down of the original move that we've been battling, courtesy of your previous visit and the online stuff that we do on a week-to-week basis. So if we have a little look now at how the swing on the right, I'll just move that over and make way for some other swings. So the swing that you started with in your most recent visit obviously is now on the left, and I'm just going to bring up some of the work that we did on day 1. Okay, so here we're trying to just feel like we're adding as much flex as we can from P4 to P5.5. So we're trying to get some flexion in there. You can see there that as we flex forward, we start to rotate. And that then, so this is a very, I can put it very posed position, but it's demonstrating more of what we'd like to see in your overall action. So more flexion, getting back into forward flexion from P4 to P5.5, keeping the wrist angles in there. So the pivot, the way the body works, there's more of a rotational aspect, and you could argue that that's sort of pull bias, even though we're not hitting a lot of pulls. The sweet spot is being kept in behind the hands, courtesy of the wrist condition. So the more bowed out your lead wrist is, and the more you maintain that, the more in the sweet spot will be at P6, and the more closed to the path the face angle will be. And that's what ideally we're trying to get. We're trying to get a swing that is from the inside with a club face that's a little bit less to the right than the path of the club. And obviously that gives us that nice little draw shot that you desire. On the left, the wrist was pretty neutral, and the swing path is being created by the chest facing the camera for too long, and the extension, you can see there the right heel lifted up a little bit more, and we've already seen that the hips tuck underneath a little bit too fast. So there's various ways we can get this club to be delivered from the inside, and some are more appropriate than others. So on the right, we're going to get back into flexion, we're going to increase the rate at which we rotate, and we're going to keep the club on the inside and close to the path, courtesy of the wrist conditions. So we have a little look now at some of the other stuff that we did. Here I'm just trying to delay the movement of the arms. So I'm trying to get you to do it more with the body. These are all things that you can rehearse, things that you can feel. And I'm asking you at this point to get chest on by P5. There you go. Really delaying the arms. You can see as you try and get chest on by P5, wrist conditions are maintained. Body starts to open up much sooner. And that's really giving you a feel. You can see the flex going in the right knee. Almost that sort of squatting or sitting down look starting to appear there now. You can see, so you're adding turn. You're leaving the arms behind, or you're returning to your forward bend. Leaving the arms behind, and the wrist condition that is preset. By the time you get to about P2, P3, the wrist starts to bow out, maintained at P4. It's just maintained into the transition as well. So the club coming plenty from the inside at that point, and shallower than what we see in your starting swing. So that's one of the aspects that we worked on, one of the feels that we worked on. Here you are on day 2 out on the golf course at Formby Hall. Swinging it much better on day 2. Wrist conditions are in there. You can see the lead wrist, palmar flexing to the top. The checkpoint that we want to use for P4 is that on most of the swings, not necessarily with driver, but on most of the swings, the right shoulder remains visible. And then from there, we're trying to get back into flexion. So this is after a day of working on the feels that I've just been going over with you. Body starts to get back into flexion. By 5.5, the arms are in a little bit more. The wrist conditions are a little bit more emphasized. Sweet spot is in a little bit more. We're a little bit more flex forward. The right heel's popping up a little bit less. And by the time we get to impact, we've got a lot more of what we would like to see. Shoulders are much squarer at impact. If anything, slightly open would be the goal. Pelvis is starting to open up a little bit more. Right heel is flatter to the ground and banking inwards slightly, courtesy of the extension starting to calm down. So as the rotation and the flexion increases, the rate at which we extend starts to slow down, or the stage at which we extend starts to change. So we start to extend a little bit later. Remember when we discussed early extension, it's not that you extend too early, it's that you don't go back into flexion enough for long enough during transition. So that was you at Formby Hall on day 2, demonstrating some good moves. This was an excellent feel for you, and something that I think we need to really focus, primarily on for the short term to give you the feels that you'd like to have. So here I'm asking you to swing to P4 and stop. Now whenever you do that, you can see that P4 is really short. There's no lifting of the arms. The level of the arms is actually beneath the level of the shoulders. Generally on your bad one, the level of the arms gets too high. So we're always trying to bring these arms down so that the right shoulder is visible. So practicing down here with a lower lead arm is not a bad thing. And what I'm asking you to do here is keep the wrist angles in and get square onto the golf club that I've held in front of you as quickly as you can. So you're really going back into flexion. If you compare that sort of P5.5 to where you were at the start of the session, you can see how much more of everything you have in there now. The one thing I would say is when you're doing this, it's just a drill, it's just a feel. Don't expect to look like that. You wouldn't want to look like that, and don't expect to achieve. If this swing on the left has 50% of what you're demonstrating on the right hand side, you'll have a great season. The things we see, obviously, right heel not popping up, right knee flexing more. One thing that you need to pay attention to when doing this is make sure that you keep the pressure on the right thumb, on the left thumb, should I say. The right hand tends to creep off the thumb as you're doing it. And the other thing is, don't let this elbow pop out too much behind you. But I really like that feeling of going from P4 and then getting chest onto the golf ball before P6. So here you're just trying to get chest on as quickly as you can. Obviously I'm holding the club out in front of you. You could do the same thing with an alignment cane on the ground, just below the level of your shoulders at P1. Try and get square onto that. So you're getting at P6, we want the body, the torso, the upper body at least, to be back into its original address forward bend. So that means we're chest onto the ball by P6. But when we're rehearsing this, I want you to get chest onto the ball by 5.5. You can see when you do that the wrist conditions stay in there beautifully and all the alignments start to look more as you would want them. So do we need as much of that? Do we need it to look as severe as that? Definitely not. Does the swing on the left need elements of that? Yes, it does. And when we looked at your swing on the previous swing when you were at Formby Hall, there were definitely elements of that getting in there. One final drill that we discussed was to lower the handle, so you can use a shaft or a club coming out of your golf bag that's just in front of or just ahead of your lead leg, and we're just trying to keep the handle lower. This was a tick over drill. This drill is the drill that we want to use when we're getting back into flexion at 5.5 the way we want to, and we just want something that's going to keep things in place, working primarily on what's going on through impact. So when the handle or when the body doesn't get back into flexion, coming through the ball, we hit out a little bit too long. Handle raises a little bit too much through impact, we can start to get the heel strikes. And if that gets out of hand, stuff's got to change before that, so we'd start to see the rate of extension increasing. Alignment's getting a little bit too much out to the right at impact, as we see here on the left. So once we're getting back into flexion on the right, you're not getting back into flexion as much as I'd like you to there, but obviously we're just doing this as a drill, as an addition to the other work that I've just gone over with you. The feeling here, or the goal here, is to keep the handle low through impact, and you can see the effect that has. So it's going to keep your alignments much more as you would like them. So instead of being sort of out to the right with the forearm alignment's much more neutral. See that instead of the right heel popping up, it's starting to stay flatter to the ground for longer. Through the hip, butt of the club stays lower for longer. Chest opens up a little bit more incrementally. Exits lower. Face is less rolled. So this as a drill is, like I say, it's a tick over drill. If the ball's behaving itself and you just want something to, you've got a tournament coming up, you're hitting it well, you want to go to the range and work on something, but you don't want to change too much, and you don't want to do too much filming, because obviously you've got a tournament coming up. We're going to use the swing or the movement, the basic movement that we've got. This is an excellent drill to just keep things ticking over, discourage the moves through impact and early post impact that would make you hit bad shots. So discourage the things that would make you hit bad shots. Heel popping up, hips tucking under, body not opening up, and encourage the things that help you hit the ball better, which is keeping the wrist angles in, opening up through the hip a little bit more, handle staying a little bit lower, heel staying a little bit lower, etc., etc. So it's a tick over drill to work on that impact interval and give you something to work on the weeks where you're hitting it well and don't want to work too much on technique and focus a little bit more on scoring. But it is nice to go to the range and just have a simple drill that you can do that encourages a lot of good movements, and a lot of movements that are appropriate to you and when you play your best golf. Just going to go look at driver now. I'm going to get a few swings up. I'll do a different recap for that and go over the changes that we suggested with your driver.